I understand that from a historic perspective, from a systemic perspective, white America's hands are not clean. I get all of that. We talked about this with the affirmative action rule last week. We understand that. But in the end, what it comes down to is this: gun control or no gun control. Who the hell's pulling the trigger? And if you're so quick to pull it against one another, how the hell do we possibly have a future? These are our children's lives that are being taken away. Talk about teenagers. Talk about teenagers getting smoked while chilling at a block party. Chilling at a block party. It's just getting worse and worse and worse. And you have to pay attention to the numbers because the numbers are dwindling. And you have to pay attention to the numbers because what's going on in our society. Let me give you another stat because I want you to pay attention. Okay? I want you to pay attention. Because see, when you ain't, because there are black folks dying, but it's a double whammy. Because it's black folks dying at the hands of black people. And when black people are killing you, eventually they're going to get caught. And when they get caught, they're going to contribute to the 1.9 million incarceration rate that presently exists right now. How do I know this for sure? Did you know there's 1,566 state prisons in the country right now? Did you know there's 98 federal prisons in this country right now? Did you know that there's 3,116 local jails right now? Did you know that there's 1,323 juvenile correctional facilities? Who the hell do you think they're building it for? Do I have to direct you to the docuseries or the documentary that was 13 on Netflix, directed by Ava DuVernay? You want to go look it up. You can lament the history of this country and how systemic racism and prejudice and all of this other stuff played a role in how black folks and crimes were criminalized to such a degree because you know what? It was modern day slavery. Slavery, the eradication of it was supposed to take place in 1865, so they had to come up with a different way to throw us in jail. Yeah. All true. Nothing false about it. But completely irrelevant when it comes to us shooting one another. What that got to do with a black person pulling out a gun and willing to shoot into a crowd filled with minorities, filled with people who look like them, that share their hue, their pigmentation, their cultural identity, and everything else in between? What that got to do with it? You gonna call it out or not? Because society's coming. Have you been paying attention? Have you been paying attention? Just last week, we sat on this show and we talked about the rulings by the Supreme Court to eradicate race as a consideration from college admissions. People are up in arms about that. And I'm like, you ain't see that coming? You see that coming? Yeah, no idea that was coming. Clarence Thomas didn't hit that last year, didn't flat out state last year that he was coming for that. That the state Supreme Court was coming to address all of those things. Last year it was Roe v. Wade. Women's right to choose, gone. Oh, gun control. We're going to alleviate those concerns. We're going to loosen those gun restrictions. So much so that when you look at states by state right now, you're talking about constitutional carry states. That means you have the right to carry concealed weapons without even a permit. Do you know there's now 26 states that have that license? Let me read them to you. Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Maine, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, West Virginia, Wyoming, and just this past Friday, Florida, the state of Governor Ron DeSantis. You now don't need a permit to carry a concealed weapon. Obviously, the lessening and the leniency as it pertains to the gun laws contributed to that. So even in states with the strictest gun laws, California, New Jersey, Connecticut, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, and New York, you go elsewhere. There's 26 states right now. That's what they did last year. This year, in a span of days, they addressed affirmative action. They elevated the religious rights of folks with the woman who didn't want to serve a gay couple. I forgot whether it was with a cake or something for their celebration. She didn't want to do it. And she earned the right to do it through the Supreme Court. What do you think is next? Ever heard of diversity, equity, and inclusion? It's called DEI. You ever heard of that? If you haven't, you should. You know why? Because before it was college admissions. But now within the same ruling, you're going to have a situation where corporations, particularly those that employ 15 or more people, can be under the same rules as public institutions. I tried to tell y'all this. I'm just looking at it. Fair admissions apply the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause to Harvard and other private universities by way of Title VI. That section of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination on the ground of race, color, or national origin by any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Title VII of the 1964 Act, as Justice Neil Gorsuch notes in his concurring opinion, applies the same anti-discrimination principles to private businesses with more than 15 employees. They are liable for damages if they discriminate on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. So if you're white, if you're Asian, if you're Hispanic, whatever, and a private industry with 15 or more employees decides that they're going to favor somebody else, and by virtue of doing so discriminate against you, they're no longer protected. Everywhere you turn, folks are coming. As a result, we need all the help we can get. We need each other. We need each other living. We need each other breathing. We need to uplift one another, to galvanize, to inspire and motivate. We need to make sure that our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed, that our eyes are wide open and we can see the forest from the trees. Not smoke one another and take one another out, and damn sure not be quiet about it. But that's what a lot of people want. You want the Stephen A's of the world to shut the hell up. And I'm not talking about the white community. I'm not talking about the Hispanic community. I'm talking about my own community. Oh, don't say anything. Why we pointing that out? Why we're talking about it? Because we're dying. That's why. We're killing one another. That's why. You got black people scared to go in their own damn communities. I remember last year watching television, and we had black folks in Chicago calling for martial law. Calling for the National Guard to come in and help out local law enforcement just so they could go home safe at night. And we supposed to be quiet about that? We ain't supposed to say anything? We just supposed to look at race? We supposed to point the finger at white America like we ain't culpable? That's what we supposed to do? Nah. I'm not doing that. As Snoop Dogg says, I ain't selling out, I'm looking out. We're not helping each other by being quiet and averting ourselves from holding our own selves accountable. Period. And you got right-wing networks and left-wing networks manipulating sound bites, grabbing a hold of it just so they can make their point or buffer their point. Bump all of that. This is about life and death. That's what this is about. This isn't a political issue, veering towards the right or the left. I didn't get into gun control. I didn't get into the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms. I didn't go there. I didn't favor one candidate over the other. I didn't go there. When I speak against Trump, I speak against him, not against Republicans. I speak against him because he doesn't know how to act. I didn't say anything about the right or left. I'm not policy driven and getting into the politics of the situation. When I'm talking about this, I'm a black man. And I'm watching black folks evaporate before our very eyes. Excuse my language, and we don't say shit. Not a damn thing. Bump that. I'm not having it. I'm not being silent. I read you the incarceration rate. I read you the percentage of blacks incarcerated. I read you the top 5 cities with the highest homicide rates. All black. With the exception of St. Louis. And we know when a lot of deaths have occurred in St. Louis, they've been black folks dying. Albeit rightfully so, we lose our damn minds when one of us is killed at the hands of a white person. How the hell are we so silent when thousands of us are falling at the hands of our own? Steve Kerr said it best. When the hell are we going to do something? When the hell are we going to do something? When the hell are we going to do something? Wes Moore, the governor from Maryland, he spoke as well. But again, I'm not disrespecting and dismissing what he's saying. But I have to take it with a grain of salt. It doesn't mean you have to, though. Put up that quote. Let's see what he had to say. Governor Wes Moore of Maryland says, last night we saw yet another mass shooting strike our community, where a celebrity gathering turned deadly. My heart breaks for these victims, their families, and the Baltimore community that is coping with the loss. Maryland has had enough of watching gun violence continue to ravage our state and our nation. The fact that these horrific shootings continue to take place is abominable. We as a state will continue to do everything to prevent senseless acts of violence like the one we saw last night. Fair statement. I will credit him for not politicizing it. I'm not saying we don't need gun control in this country, because I certainly don't believe that people need to be walking around with concealed weapons without a permit or training. And I certainly don't believe that an average American citizen should be walking around with an AR-15, AK-47, stuff like that. I don't believe in that. I do believe in Second Amendment rights. I do believe that you have a right to have a gun in your home. I'm not for the complete eradication of guns. I just want them policed better, that's all. But no matter which side you're on, this is about the side of human life. This is about Black lives mattering. Where's the noise? When are we going to do something? If a police officer went out there right now and killed somebody black, we'd be in an uproar. And rightfully so. If a white person or some wannabe cop who was white or Hispanic happened to shoot an unarmed black person, we'd be up in arms. And rightfully so. How is this proliferation and accumulation of flat-out, cold-blooded murder not causing the same kind of uproar? It's inconsistent. And when it's inconsistent, white folks and other folks in this country look at us with a raised eyebrow because the level of consistency is not there. And it gives them cause to challenge the authenticity of our argument, because we're not making an argument about Black lives mattering. We're only saying that when a black life is taken from somebody who's not black. But we ain't saying it when it's taken from those who are. And when you do that, you dilute the potency of our position. and the argument falls on deaf ears. And then everything that we want accomplished is like whistling in the wind. It's why racism has fallen to the bottom of the totem pole in favor of xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia. It's why affirmative action gets eradicated without a blink of an eye. It's how all the things that particularly affect our communities becomes a diluted issue. It's why diversity, equity, and inclusion is next. Because we don't matter as much as we should. Part of the reason is history and systemic racism that comes with it. The other part is the fact that we have some bad apples in our community who don't give two shits about us and would take us out without blinking. When are we gonna deal with that? When are we gonna deal with that?